Here we go. And I believe we are recording. All right. Thanks for coming to the interview.
Thank you.
I have several questions to ask you that have been drawn up by the committee of counselors here at my agency. But to begin with, I'd just like to ask you to start by having you tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Yeah, I am currently a student at Lincoln University. I'll be graduating next May, and I'm going to be getting my Bachelor of Science in Psychology. From there, I would like to become a psychologist, so I'm going to be going to graduate school after that. That is my plan.
What part of psychology?
Do you say what part of psychology?
Yeah.
Okay. It's neuropsychology is my plan. Yeah.
All right.
So I'm really interested in that.
Are there particular schools you're looking at?
So far, I haven't narrowed it down yet, since it is kind of a difficult, focus to find in different schools. It's still fairly a new field. So it's kind of hard to find somebody that has a program that's specifically for neuropsychology, but I am looking.
That's great. All right. I wish you luck on that.
Thank you.
All right, so let's see. I'm going to go ahead and start up with some of these questions here. Can you explain what the phrase work ethic means to you, and then could you describe your work ethic?
Okay. Yeah, I would say work ethic is just basically how you go about your work. Are you kind of like take it slow, piece by piece? Are you more just kind of tackle a whole problem at once? Kind of just how you approach it. And I would say my work ethic is definitely, I take a look at things and I kind of pick it apart. I love details and puzzles. So finding things out, kind of figuring out how things work.
Okay.
And then kind of putting it all together. I don't want it to sound like I do it slowly, because I don't. I do kind of take a whole picture and look at it and then piece it apart and then put it back together. That's how I would say that I work. I'm a very hard worker.
Right. Well, that's another piece of it is basically, how connected do you feel to your work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very focused when it comes to my work. Mm-hmm. Whenever it's outside of work, I do have attention deficit issues. Mm-hmm. But it comes to work, it's something that I can really focus on because it's something that I'm interested in. When I find things that I really love, that I'm interested in, I really invest myself in it. And I take a lot of pride in my work. So it's something that I really invest in.
Great. Okay. Let's see. Can you give me an example of a time when you had to deal with a difficult classmate or colleague?
Yes, there actually was a time I worked at a big home improvement store. Uh-huh. And I had a coworker that was upset because I got a position that she had wanted. Mm-hmm. And so then there were a lot of times when we would interact and she kind of had this attitude that she wasn't very happy with me, and she made it very difficult to work together. And I approached her and I just asked her, I said, hey, I understand. I'm sorry that, you were upset by me getting this position. I said, I know it's happened to me too. I was just, disappointed then as well. But we have to find out some way. We're going to have to keep working together to make our department run smoothly.
Yeah.
And that seemed to work pretty well. After that, we didn't really have any issues. So that's kind of how I approach it. I try to talk to the person first and work something out, find some middle ground to meet on.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, in terms of counseling, that's kind of the best way, I think, to approach almost any kind of difficult relationship, is to figure out where is the common ground and how to negotiate from there. Let's see, if your colleagues had an opportunity to tell us about what your primary strength is, what would they say?
Primary strength. I would say that my primary strength is probably just how much I love what I want to do and how much I love like figuring out more things. I love reading up on new stuff and just expanding my knowledge in what I want to go into. That's
Okay.
really important to me, to know more about what I want to do. And
Okay.
so I would say my knowledge is probably one of my strengths.
That's outstanding. Can you tell me what you think your primary weakness is?
My primary weakness, I would say probably I tend to beat myself up sometimes if I don't meet my own standards.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that can be kind of, it gets to me sometimes, and I just have to reorganize, and I can't be perfect, and that's something that I have to remind myself of a lot of times.
Okay. Thank you for that. Let's see. Can you describe what you would classify as a crisis?
Ooh, a crisis, I would say anything that puts somebody in either, basically when someone's basic needs are not being met or they're at danger. So if someone's psychological, physical, any kind of well-being is just at stake, I would categorize that as a crisis.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense to me. Um, okay, so this may be an alternate crisis, perhaps. Let's say it's 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, and your supervisor gives you an assignment that needs to be finished by 8 o'clock in the morning on Monday. You've already made plans to be away for the entire weekend. What would you do?
I personally, I would probably cancel or reschedule my plans just to get it done, just because work is important to me. Um, I know, plans can be rescheduled, but if it has to do with work, that's what you're committed to. So you have to make that a priority sometimes, even if it's not fun.
That was a tricky question, so you handled that well. I don't think there's any one right answer. I mean, it's a tough one, and that varies from person to person.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what's the best book you've read in the last year?
Ooh, the best book I've read in the last year. I didn't read it for the first time, but I've read it a couple times. But one of my all-time favorites is Wuthering Heights. I love
Oh, yeah.
classic books, so I love the Bronte sisters and all that stuff. So that's one of my favorites, and I reread it again this past year. So it's a little dark, but I like it.
Have you watched the classic movie on that too?
Yes.
That's wonderful. Sorry. Okay. So, what do you do on an ongoing basis to keep your professional skills up to date?
Like I said, I read a lot of papers. I actually enjoy reading research papers.
Mhm.
So I will go in. I even follow on social media some different neuropsychologists and science pages that are specifically for neurosciences. And so I'll read articles and things on there. I'll actually go on ResearchGate, and I'll read some papers on there sometimes just to kind of know what's new and, different people's perspectives on things.
That's great. You may be more updated than I am. That's amazing. I try to keep up myself. I'm on ResearchGate, but I haven't read an article there recently. Have you ever been on a dysfunctional team?
A dysfunctional team. Yeah, there's been a couple times where I would say at school and some like smaller groups, sometimes there's not a lot of communication,
Mhm.
and maybe there's not, people aren't really willing to work together, and it can be very hard to get a project done and get it done well if you don't have all the parts working together,
Mhm.
basically. So yeah, I have experience before.
Okay. So if this, let's say some student just basically not showing up, how would you handle that?
That actually has happened, yes, where we had a student that was not showing up, wasn't really participating, and I went with another member of the group, and we went to talk with the professor to kind of see if we could figure something out. It didn't get resolved very well, unfortunately, but there were some things that kind of came into play that blocked that from happening.
Okay.
But of course, now it was this semester, so
Oh,
things have kind of been cut off from that. So
sure. I understand that. Okay. Um, let's see. Can you tell us about your experience in working with people from backgrounds that are different from yours, racially, ethnically, religiously, otherwise?
Um, I really love learning about different cultures, and I actually have started, I want to learn more languages too.
Mhm.
Uh, I speak English, obviously, and then I'm learning Spanish still slowly.
All right. Yeah.
Actually just started learning Korean. So
Wow.
that was, and then I've got some languages lined up after that, that once I have a good handle on these that I want to learn.
Okay.
But while I work on a language, I really make it important to learn about the culture behind it as well. So I'll look up, just different social things
Mhm.
or the history of the country that, it originates from, or different countries. I really
What's one
like
thing that you've learned
context.
about Korea?
Oh, I've found that respect of elders is a very important part of their culture, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that there's different social cues, and also titles are very important as well. So just the way they communicate is really interesting to me.
Excellent. That's great. That's outstanding. Can you describe a situation where you were under a great deal of pressure and how you handled it?
Um, let's see. I think probably the best example I can give you. I was working two jobs when I lived in Warrensburg. I worked
Mhm.
at the big home improvement store, and then I actually worked. It was kind of a, I don't really know how to describe the company.
Mhm.
It was kind of, you work it with developmentally challenged people
Mhm.
in their homes. So it
Okay.
wasn't
Yeah.
in like a group, but it was like they had their own homes. And
Okay.
so we were on shifts, and I worked a lot of nights.
Mhm.
And so that was really challenging for me to go from working an 8-hour shift at night to go and working a 9-hour shift at my home improvement
Yeah.
store job. And so I didn't get a whole lot of sleep at that time, but it was a really difficult time for me to try and work both jobs and keep my sanity.
Mhm. Mhm.
And my job at the home with developmentally um, challenged people, it was pretty hard because a lot of times I was there by myself.
Okay.
And so if there was ever, I didn't have a whole lot of support from the management, was the hardest part. There were a lot of times when I was alone, there would be an issue that would come up. I would try to contact someone, I would get no response and no support on it at all. So
So
that
what
was
would you
really hard.
do? What would you
um,
do?
I usually tried to contact them again. I would call them. If I didn't get any response, I would try to call someone higher up, and it just still didn't help. And I ended up leaving that job because I
Mhm.
wasn't getting the support I needed. But yeah, that was hard.
Pretty frustrating. Yeah. I can only imagine. I mean, I also know that a lot of agencies are understaffed, so sometimes that's
Hmm.
still a common issue, unfortunately. Uh,
Yeah,
if we were to call a former supervisor of yours, what would they tell us about your ability to be dependable?
dependable. Actually, I would say that's probably what my former employers would say the most about me.
Mhm.
I would say that I'm very dependable, and I think they would agree with me on that because I always show up to work. There's been a couple times, where something's come up where it's like car issues or something like that. I might be like 10, 15 minutes late, but I always show up because that's a priority for me to be there. That's my job. It's my commitment, you know. So that's actually something my last employer said to me before I left. He was like, I could always count on you to be here. If we needed to cover a shift or anything, we knew we could call you. That's
That's
something
great.
that,
That's great.
yeah.
Okay. Well, no, I'm glad to hear that. Um, can you tell me what types of people seem to rub you the wrong way?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say probably people that try to push their beliefs on someone else, or they try to talk about something that they want to think that they're passionate about, but they are not very informed on. That tends to bother me a little bit. If you want to believe in something, if you want to have something that you want to talk about with me that you're passionate about, I would love to do that. I love talking to people about their beliefs and what they think, but I want them to be coming from a well-informed place sometimes. So I'm not going to get on them about it or anything like that, but I'm going to say, hey, you should check this out, or maybe you should learn this, maybe we can learn about this together,
Yeah.
But that does tend to bother me when someone is trying to either push something on me, or they're trying to argue for something that they're not well informed on.
Well, you handled that very diplomatically. That was very good. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I had a couple actually. I wanted to know, how is your agency currently handling the COVID-19 situation?
Yeah, we have switched fully now to telehealth, like Zoom meetings and FaceTime and things like that in terms of counseling.
So you are actually like seeing someone's face.
Yeah.
It's not just on the phone. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And I think another question I had was, how would you see the agency changing in the future? Or how would you like to see it change?
Go back to one-on-one in-person meetings. Okay, I'm gonna stop record.
Okay.
Hold on just a
Thank you.
second. Let me see, figure out. Hold on, don't leave yet.